Decades have passed since May 18 Democratic movement. Much of the details of the historic uprising by ordinary citizens remain hidden or distorted when it involved brutal violence and suppression. Still today, efforts to reveal what exactly happened on that fateful day in 1980 continues. For our news feature tonight, Unshin sheds light on the latest findings.
Some 270 kilometers from the capital Seoul, in the nation's southwest, a city that's a symbol of the pro-democracy movement. Gwangju made global headlines in 1980 for the May 18th democracy movement, a civilian demonstration against the newly installed military government of Chun Doo-hwan. But the peaceful demonstration was put down by some 20,000 troops sent by the regime. Beaten, tortured, and gunned down by their own military, more than 150 civilians died and 3,000 were wounded. 37 years later, sites commemorating the victims are found throughout Gwangju, including a national cemetery and a memorial center. But many who lived through that history say that the full truth of the crackdown has never been revealed. Fact-finding continues by the city, its residents, and people from outside the community. Most recently, new revelations about the army's use of force against citizens. American journalist Tim Sherrock, who briefly lived in Korea as a child, has a lifetime's worth of records collected about the May 18th movement. He shared his latest discovery from official U.S. documents that had been kept classified for decades.
The U.S. military intelligence had extensive information about the Chun Doo-hwan group. Despite all this information about what happened, the U.S. decided on May 22, 1980, to use military force to end the Gwangju uprising.
The U.S. didn't command the use of force, but with South Korea's control of its military dependent on U.S. authority, it speaks volumes about the role of the U.S. in the inhumane treatment of local citizens. The U.S. had received inaccurate information from Korea, including many false reports. For example, the students were holding provincial government officials hostage.
The U.S. officials had actually known that the documents that they were receiving from Korean officials were false documents. These were distorted reports. And yet they still sided with Chun Doo-hwan. Why?
They believed, based on perhaps on the distorted reports from the Korean military and their own analysis from the CIA, that this rebellion could spread nationwide and maybe bring down the South Korean government. So I think, you have to remember, in this context, there was the Iran crisis where students had seized the embassy in Iran. This was a huge crisis for the Carter administration. They did not want to have another national security crisis in Korea. They decided the Korean military was the only force here that could preserve stability.
Sherrock is working closely with the May 18 archive, which contains articles, journals, photos, and tapes of the period collected by the city. Many of these recognized as UNESCO World Heritage.
이 자료는 6월 2일자입니다. 5.18이 끝나고 나서 언론 검열을 해서 그게 많이 빠지고 새로운 것으로 나타났다는 결정적 증거입니다.
But the mounting evidence collected and Sherrock's disclosure about Washington's involvement are only the tip of the iceberg.
A recent finding shows 150 bullet marks on the window of a building named Chunil, in front of the provincial government office, where the last resistance of the movement took place. Upon our request, the National Forensic Service confirmed those were fired from a helicopter. To continue digging up facts about the movement, we need to work with the government. And I hope U.S. officials will cooperate by unveiling their confidential documents.
On May 18 this year, in front of the victims and their family members, the newly elected President Moon Jae-in vowed to widen the probe to set the record straight about incidents that happened to the movement. Although there's still so much left to be unraveled about the social and political aspects, efforts by the community and an independent probe are expected to pick up momentum under the new administration.
Efforts to verify the facts of the Gwangju democracy movement have been made in the past, but what's different this time is that we're beyond the point where the investigation results could benefit a certain political party. Now it's solely about learning what really happened in May 1980 and how some aspects of the movement were twisted and censored.
Every year, some 60,000 visitors from all over the world come here to the May 18th National Cemetery to pay their respects to the victims who died fighting for democracy. And the need to dig deeper into what happened in 1980 lies right here, as it represents Koreans' desire for democracy and the people's determination to avoid making the same mistakes again. Unshin, Arirang News, Gwangju.